Test, don't guess, how all disease can be traced back to one major thing, and how conventional medicine is sorely lacking in getting to the root cause or root mechanism that can help people to be well. This episode with my guest today, Dr. Tom O'Brien, is power-packed with lots of nuggets from the brain to the gut that you will not want to miss. This is part one of my interview, and you will want a notebook for jotting down some important facts that he is sharing. And if you have been a client of mine in my program, you will love to hear from Dr. Tom, as I have referenced him a time or three, and I just know you will enjoy hearing his expertise. All right, friend, let's get to it. Hi, everybody. It is so good to have you back here on the Treasured Wellness Show. I have such an important and amazing guest for you today. Dr. Tom O'Brien is with me, and he is a functional medicine expert, best-selling author, and all-around incredible human, as you will find out. And I am just so excited to share him with you. Let me read his bio real quick. When it comes to getting healthy, Dr. Tom O'Brien's goal for you is to make it easy to do the right thing, which I love. And as an internationally recognized, admired, and compassionate speaker focusing on food sensitivities, environmental toxins, and the development of autoimmune diseases, Dr. Tom's audiences discover that it is through a clear understanding of how you got to where you are that you and your doctor can figure out what it will take to get you well. Oh my goodness, I love that. As a health coach who helps women in the midlife season to remove the overwhelm and keep things simple and doable, I absolutely love Dr. Tom's approach. And as I've learned from Dr. Tom for well over 10 years, and I do appreciate the unique way that he explains things really in layman's terms so that everyone can understand. So if you can't tell, I am beyond thrilled to have Dr. Tom O'Brien on the show. And if this is your first time hearing Dr. Tom speak, I know you will be glued to this interview. Dr. Tom, welcome. I'm so happy to chat with you today.
Thank you, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for that very kind introduction.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every word. So let's just dive in. We have so much to talk about today. I believe that the body is brilliantly created, and it knows what to do when we give it the proper tools and support. And most people nowadays are chronically inflamed. So I really want to dive into that inflammation situation that is creating a host of health issues. But I will say that I'm honestly a bit concerned about the word inflammation, that it's becoming another buzzword in the medical field. And it's just starting to lose its meaning, right, as it relates in health to the brain and the body. But the reality is it is a major factor as to why people are sick. So I know you talked, Dr. Tom, about a weak link in the chain of overall health. Would you explain what you mean by that and share how inflammation can cause symptoms like foggy thinking and extreme fatigue?
Sure. Do we have a weekend?
Right. That'll be next. We'll schedule that.
Next, yes. Yeah, if you pull a chain, the chain always breaks at the weakest link. Always. It's at one end, the middle, the other end. It's your heart, your brain, your liver, your kidneys. Wherever the weak link is, that's where the chain's going to break. Well, what determines the weak link? There are two things that determine the weak link. Your genetics, that's the deck of cards you were dealt in this lifetime. You've got the BRCA1 gene for breast cancer. That's a weak link in your chain. It doesn't mean you're getting breast cancer. It means you're vulnerable to breast cancer. Well, what do I do? Stop pulling on the chain so hard. Well, how do I do that? Well, that's the million-dollar question. And the answer is, what's pulling on the chain? And what's pulling on the chain every single time is inflammation. It's always inflammation, without exception. And can I share my screen and
Absolutely.
show a few slides here? This is the presentation that I give. Let's see now. there we go, right there, that one. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is my boss. He's my son. And I believe the only way that we're going to save the planet, we had just over 2 billion people on the planet in 1960. Now there's almost 8 billion. Now you think about that, and that's in 50, 60 years, we've increased the number of people on the planet, not double, not triple, but quadruple the number of people on the planet. And that's creating a lot of problems. And I believe the only way that we're going to solve these problems is by thinking outside the box that's creating the problems. But you and I are not going to think outside the box. Perhaps we will as individuals, but our politicians are not, businesses are not. They're all invested in their own self-interest, so it's not going to happen. How do you think outside the box? You raise a generation of children who think outside the box. That's the goal here, is to raise a generation of children who think for themselves. And I'm going to introduce to you a few concepts here in this next hour we have, that I'm hoping you're going to say, what? Wait, what? And that you're going to think about them. And then because as you said in the introduction, my goal is making it easy to do the right thing. Well, to make it easy to do the right thing, you have to know what the right thing is. Okay, well, what does that mean? It means that it has to make sense. If you've got a map of New Delhi, let me see if I can stop sharing for a minute here. And do you still see my screen, or do you see me?
I see you now.
Okay, good. If you have a map of New Delhi, and that's a difficult town to get around, really difficult town to get around, New Delhi. It's the one place in the world I will not drive. I'm born and raised in Detroit, so I grew up with muscle cars. I'm a good driver, but I won't drive in New Delhi. I mean, Rome, they drive on the sidewalks. That's okay. I can handle that. But New Delhi, I can't. I just won't. So when you've got a map of New Delhi, you're able to get around the trains, the buses, whatever you use. But you take that map of New Delhi that gives you guidance on exactly what to do, what's the right thing to do to get to where you want to go, and you go to New York, that map is useless. You need a map of New York. So the idea of shotgunning health ideas into people who are already not doing very well is really limited. You need a map of your body. The rule is, in God we trust. All others require data. What does that mean? Test, don't guess. So your health practitioner has to learn how to do the right tests to identify, is this a problem for you? And if it is, okay, this is what's pulling on your chain. This is something that's pulling on your chain, right? So that's the goal. Now I'm going to go back to sharing screen again after my little thing about New Delhi. Let's see here. Let's go here and here. There we go. And so I'm hoping that some of the ideas you get here will you'll be at night thinking about oh, wow, yeah, that's right. As you're falling asleep or you're driving down the road and an idea, oh, I remember they said that in the podcast. Wow, that's really interesting. So that you dive in to some new ways of thinking. There's some things that you just need to learn that you don't currently know, or you wouldn't have the health issues you've got right now. So this is so brilliantly said. I mean, it's just so very true. And what's he talking about? A healthy human. What's that? Well, we know lifespans have been increasing globally, but in the last number of years, that's not true. Children born today have a shorter expected span than their parents. It's like, what?
That's so tragic.
If I have a new child, if I bring a child into the world, their expected life expectancy is less than mine? Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's so much disease now that people don't know how to identify. And
Right.
there's a 20-year difference between life expectancy and healthy life expectancy. And we know with males, the average male lives to almost 79, but his healthy life expectancy is only to 62. That means that the last 16 years of his life is with disabilities, on medications, unable to walk up a hill, whatever the disability should be. But the average is 21% of a man's life is with disabilities. My goal is that I'm not one in a wheelchair drooling in a nursing home. I'm hoping that my healthy lifespan and my total lifespan are really close to each other, so that when my time comes, I just go to sleep and don't wake up, in the best of all worlds. Women live a little longer. The average age is almost 83, but 24% of their lives are with disabilities. So my understanding is your main audience is women coming into their middle ages. And if this is the perfect time to begin thinking about this stuff, because what you're going to learn here, yes, 1/5 of an individual's life is lived with morbidities. That means disabilities. And everybody says, okay, so what's the cause? What's the cause of inflammation? Where's it coming from? Well, I suggest there is no root cause. And when doctors say that, you got to be really careful, because I think they just bought a bag of thinking that's going to limit how they look at your health issue. There is no root cause. There are many causes, but there's one root mechanism in all chronic diseases, all of them. There's one mechanism. I call it the prime directive. And I grew up with this generation, so you just don't mess with the prime directive. And what is the prime directive? The CDC tells us that 14 of the 15 top causes of death are chronic inflammatory diseases. It's always inflammation, unless it's an unintentional injury. Everything else, cancer, diabetes, liver disease, septicemia, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, brain fog, they're all inflammation pulling on the chain, and the chain breaks at the weakest link. That's how you get disease. Chronic inflammatory diseases are recognized as the most significant cause of death in the world today. And that's why I just spent the last year traveling to 7 countries, 64 interviews of the world's leading scientists. I'm not exaggerating. I interviewed all of the greats that I've read their papers, and I asked them the questions, and we put it together in a docuseries. It's a 9-part docuseries that's about 40 minutes a day for 9 days, and it's all free, called The Inflammation Equation. And when you watch The Inflammation Equation, you understand where the pull on the chain is coming from. You understand in your life, you can say, oh, wow. Well, yeah, if we go on vacation, when we come home, I have to open all the windows and air the house out. Now they're telling me that's mold in the house. I don't see any mold, but yeah, you've got mold if you have to air the house out. That's mold. And so you have to check to see, where's the inflammation coming from? Now, inflammation is produced by your immune system. It's the immune system's way of protecting you. Now, when your immune system determines a threat, they activate, you've got your immune system's just the armed forces in your body. It's the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard. We call them IgA, IgG, IgE, IgM, cytokines. They're all different branches of the armed forces there to protect you. That's their job. So the $1 million question is, the immune system got this message, we're under attack, fight and defend. And the only way your body can protect itself is by creating inflammation to kill the bug that's trying to get in. That's the only way. Now, this drawing comes from David Furman at Stanford and at the Buck Institute. And he got the contract with NASA to figure out, why are the astronauts aging so quickly? Why? And he put this drawing together, which is brilliant because everyone can understand this. But people dive into this and they can spend 8 years studying this and get a PhD in immunology trying to understand this. But the basic principle is that when you've got chronic infections, too many bugs or virus or bacteria, or you're not active, you're sitting all day, which is a disease state of being. Well, what do you mean? We've been sitting our whole lives. Yes, but your ancestors didn't. Your ancestors were moving all day, every day, which is what you're supposed to do. That's why the magic number is 9,826. That's the magic number. In the Journal of the American Medical Association, they followed over 80,000 people, and they found that those that walked 9,826 steps per day or more, 10,000 steps to round it out, they had a 51% reduction in dementia. It didn't matter if they had the ApoE4 gene for Alzheimer's. Didn't matter. If they walked 10,000 steps a day, because physical inactivity is one of the triggers of inflammation, turning the wheel on the left, or obesity, or too many bad guys in your gut, not enough good guys, called dysbiosis, or the foods that you're eating, or too much stress, and the stress hormones are causing these problems, creating inflammation, or you're not getting regenerative sleep, or you've got accumulations of too many toxic chemicals in your body, like petroleum byproducts or glyphosate or mold. Any of those things on the left side of this drawing turn the wheel, which turns the wheel in the middle, which is, okay, so this is for doctors, and I put every one of these cause oxidative stress. That's the inflammation inside the cell that occurs, which then creates systemic chronic inflammation. So that middle wheel gets turned. Now you've got chronic inflammation in your bloodstream, which turns the wheel on the right, which manifests as diabetes or cardiovascular disease or cancer or depression, autoimmune diseases, brain diseases, osteoporosis, immunosenescence, it doesn't matter. The mechanism is the same. The prime directive is that it's always chronic inflammation that causes the eventual disease. And in this paper by David Furman and his group, he tells us that there are 9 hallmarks of aging. And every single one of these hallmarks are linked by sustained chronic inflammation. And that's the different hallmarks that I teach doctors about, each one of them individually. We're not going to talk about that today, but my point is every single one of the markers of aging, which is what they figured out for the astronauts in space, every single one of those is caused by chronic, sustained, low-grade inflammation. Now, there's one more point I'm going to bring up, and then I'll stop. Alessio Fasano is a professor of medicine, professor of pediatrics at Harvard Medical School, a professor of nutrition at Harvard School of Public Health, the chief of pediatric gastroenterology at Mass General at Harvard, the director of mucosal immunology at Harvard, the director of the Celiac Research Center at Harvard. This guy has 5 titles. Any one title is a lifelong dream for someone at the top of their game. He's got 5. We think he's going to win the Nobel Prize. We truly do, because it was him and his team that have been, in 1997, they identified this thing, leaky gut. They identified how this thing happens and what to do about it. And he's published over 300 papers now on this topic of leaky gut. So you'll see a research paper, and there'll be 8 authors on the paper. And the last one, Alessio Fasano, the boss, he put his stamp of approval on it. But this paper, he wrote himself, which tells you how important he thinks this topic is. And the title of the paper is All Disease Begins in the Leaky Gut. All disease, it doesn't matter. They begin in the leaky gut. That's why the gut is so important. If you're only going to do one thing, Mrs. Patient, you work on developing a healthy gut microbiome. That's the most powerful thing you can do. We recommend you do a lot more, but this is the most powerful. And Fasano tells us that the 2 most powerful triggers for creating a leaky gut are bad bacteria in your gut and gluten. Those are not dairy, not soy, not any other chemical, gluten. And in the Q&A, we'll go through the why of that. Where is all that coming from? But with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to go back to Q&A now. But this concept is just so important to understand, is as to where all of this comes from. And it comes from inflammation, and there are so many triggers that can cause the pull on the chain that manifests as recurrent bladder infections or manifests as recurrent miscarriages. This is how I got into this. When I was an intern 45 years ago, my wife and I could not get pregnant. And I called the 7 most famous holistic doctors I'd ever heard of and asked what they do. They all gave me their ideas. You know what a category 1 is? No. Learn. Okay, category 1. And I put a program together, and we were pregnant in 6 weeks. My neighbors in married housing who had been through artificial insemination, nothing had worked. They asked if I'd work with them. And I said, well, I don't think it'll hurt you in any way. Okay. They were pregnant in 3 months. So we were hot to trot and telling the world, we're now 4 months pregnant and just had another success. And people were coming to me. I was in school in Chicago and living in the dorm, married housing on campus. But people came to my dorm room and said, please help me. Please help me. We've had 3 miscarriages. Please help. My sister told me about you. And so okay. But that's how I got into all of this. That's how it all started, was with recurrent miscarriages. You have to reduce the inflammation. And I'll give you an example, a study now on reducing the inflammation. In the Journal of the American Medical Association, they published a study in 2018. Every doctor should know this and memorize it because it's so important. But it got no press. Absolutely no press, because there's no profit anywhere. There's no drug with this. But they looked at women going through infertility clinics. And they ruled out, now the editors of the journal, the American Medical Association, wrote an article or wrote a comment, and they said, this is an elegant study using sophisticated biomarkers to demonstrate their point. Now, the editors of the Journal of the American Medical Association don't say that very often. They don't say that. So that was, okay. I'll read with open eyes and open mind. Okay. So they ruled out all of the known factors that influence a negative result to implantation, artificial insemination. They ruled out alcohol and cigarettes and exercise, no exercise, drugs, pharmaceuticals, socioeconomic class, race. They ruled out all that out in an elegant way. And they looked at one thing. How many servings of fruits and vegetables is the woman eating per day while she's going through the implantation process? How many servings per day? And they divided the women into quartiles, the lowest number of servings per day, the next, the third, and the highest. And the results were shocking, completely shocking. Women in the highest quartile of fruit and vegetable consumption per day, compared to women in the lowest quartile, women in the highest quartile had an 18% less likelihood of successful implantation. less likelihood. And if they did have a positive implantation, they had a 26% less likelihood of a live birth. They lost a baby more often to miscarriages. Wait, what? What did you just say? Like the picture of the man laying in bed, like, what? And I hope you dive into this on your own when this interview is over. You know, that cute little drawing I gave you, the woman diving in to the stars. You need to dive into this. What? Yes, less likelihood. But here's the good news. There was a group of women that the researchers didn't know about until after they started the study that were eating organic. And in that category, the results were the exact opposite. Complete opposite. The more fruits and vegetables you ate organic, the better the outcome. And this is the really good news. Women in the category of organic fruit and vegetable consumption were put in that category, and they got the much better results if they ate 3 servings per week, not 3 servings a day. It didn't take very much. Now, the authors of this elegant study didn't address that concept. But I know why it only took 3 servings a week. Because if you're eating organic whenever you can, you probably have organic shampoo in your bathroom, and you've got organic soap in the kitchen sink, and you've got organic dishwashing detergent. You're doing the little things every day, and it really is, you know, every time I sign a book, it's the same way. I ask them their name, and then I write their name, and base hits win the ball game. Tom O'Brien. It's the little things you do every single day that accumulatively reduce the pull on the chain. So your weak link, wherever it is, remember the prime directive, it doesn't matter where it is, wherever it is, you're reducing the pull on the chain, and then you extend the healthy lifespan closer to your total lifespan. That's the goal. And this is the map that you follow for your body. You find out, what are the triggers of inflammation in my body? And when you find that out, you say, really? I've got this high a level of phthalates in my body? And then you start to study phthalates, and you read my book, and you learn that when you store leftover food in plastic containers in the refrigerator, the next day, the food has these chemicals in it from the plastic that are called endocrine disruptors, hormone disruptors. They're in the chicken. They're in the leftover spaghetti now, or plastic water bottles. A study came out 8 months ago, I think, about 8 months ago, where they developed a new technology, a laser technology, to measure plastic particles in bottles of water, in the water. And most of us have heard of microplastics, that the plastics in the ocean are breaking down, and microplastics are in the fish and all that. But this new laser technology can identify nanoplastics. Really, really, nano is a millionth of a gram. And what they found, they went to the store and they bought 3 different famous waters, popular bottles of water, 3 liters of water, 3 different companies, and the average was over 240,000 nanoparticles in a liter of water. 240,000. Now, these nanoparticles, when you drink the water, you don't need a leaky gut. They go right through the gut into the bloodstream. And then they're in the bloodstream, and they go right through the cheesecloth that's around your brain, called the blood-brain barrier. They go right into the brain, and then your immune system in the brain gets activated, trying to protect you from an invader. And now here comes the inflammation in the brain, because there's an invader here, and the inflammation comes, and now there's collateral damage because the invaders are coming constant 24/7 into the brain. So your immune system is constantly trying to fight these invaders in the brain. Here comes your brain inflammation. Here comes brain fog. Here comes seizures. Here comes depression. Here comes anxiety. Here comes schizophrenia. Just go on Google and type in schizophrenia and gluten. Here come the studies on the inflammation from gluten. When you go on a gluten-free diet, many schizophrenics get better. Not every single one of them, but many of them do. So you have to get the map of your body, and you see, wow, I've got phthalates in my body, and I've got lead, or I've got arsenic, and I've got mold metabolites in my body, and I'm sensitive to wheat and to soy. Oh my God, I didn't know this. Wow, that explains why I've got brain fog once in a while. And it's going to take you 6 months to 2 years to clean this up. There is no magic pill that you can take and you're going to extend your healthy lifespan. That's utter nonsense and marketing bullshit. Excuse me. But they're taking people's money with false pretenses that you're going to be healthier. Yeah, you'll feel better for a little while, but the inflammation is still continuing. You just took 2 shots of espresso, so you feel good. You're not tired anymore. But that's what you did when you're taking nutrition and you're not dealing with the inflammation that's under the surface. It's the prime directive for all disease. 14 of the 15 top causes of death are chronic inflammatory diseases. Wake up. Excuse me, but we don't have time. We're killing the planet too quickly. You have to wake up to this. And don't believe me. Watch the inflammation equation. It's free. Just watch it. Listen to David Furman. Listen to Dale Bredesen, the godfather of Alzheimer's reversal, who's written a number of books already, and he's got hundreds of patients. Well, he's got hundreds of doctors trained in his methodology around the world, and thousands of patients who have reduced their Alzheimer's. Card-carrying reduction, tests back normal again. And you'll see it again and again and again. And your regular doctors say, that's nonsense, that's impossible. No, it's not. You just never studied this stuff on how to stop pulling on the chain and calm down the inflammation in the brain. Dale Bredesen talks about this, and I'll stop after this example. But Dale talks about this, and he says, imagine an old factory. It's been abandoned for many years, and the windows have been kicked out, and there's gang graffiti on the walls inside, and there's 36 holes in the roof. So when it rains, there's puddles on the floor in there. It's just a mess. That's your brain with Alzheimer's. That's your brain. How are we ever going to think that? How can you possibly think there's a pill you're going to take that's going to fix that? That's utter nonsense. You've got 36 holes in the roof that have to be fixed. You have to check for gluten sensitive. You have to check for elevated homocysteine. You have to check for heavy metals. You have to look at your omega-3s versus your omega-6s. There's a whole bunch of things you have to do to patch the holes in the roof to get your brain working right again. But it's by finding out how you got to where you are that you and your doctor can figure out how do you get back to a healthier way of living and increasing your healthy lifespan closer to your total lifespan.
Agreed. And optimal health should be the goal, right? Because in your slide, you don't want to get to retirement age, right? You retire. What happens to most Americans when they retire? Then they spend the rest of their life.
They buy a lazy boy. They buy a lazy boy.
Right. And this is where like the dis-ease has by then turned into disease. And there's so many different areas I could go from everything.
Look, here's an example. I work at my computer every day, and in the morning when I make our morning coffee, I also make my pot of green tea, which sits here all day long. Because you read the study, and I just sip all day long. There you go. Because when you read the studies, you drink 2 cups of green tea a day, you reduce your risk of cardiovascular death by over 20%. You drink 4 cups a day, you reduce your risk of death from cardiovascular disease over 50%. And they looked at over 70,000 people, for this study. It's like, oh my God. So you learn about it, you try green tea. And say, I don't really like that. All right, try a different type. There are many types of green tea. I personally like jasmine. I don't
I
like
was going to say that. That's my favorite,
yeah,
jasmine.
yeah. So you just learn these little things and you start including them in your lifestyle. You go back to my book, You Can Fix Your Brain, and there's 36 different things to do. For example, when you go back and you say, oh yeah, those plastic storage containers, I give you 3 URLs for glass storage containers, Miles Kimball, Amazon, and whatever the third one is, I don't remember. And you go online and you look at those, say, oh, those are, and I like those. And you order 3 round ones and 2 square ones and 1 for the pie. You hit send, you pay through credit card, you're done. But never will you poison your family again with plastic storage containers. Give those to your husband to store nails in the garage. That's what they're good for, right?
Right. Yeah,
exactly. And then you do the next little thing, and then you do the next little thing. And 6 months from now, you go to church and you see someone you haven't seen in a while. Wow, you look great. What happened to you? Well, I learned that nail polish, the phthalates from nail polish get in your bloodstream in 4 or 5 minutes. So I found organic nail polish. That I don't have that anymore. And I got glass storage containers in the kitchen. And I found out that I had arsenic poisoning. So I learned how to cook rice, but get the arsenic out of it. And you and your friend just go, what?
That's a little bit more than they asked for.
That's right. And you say to them, I didn't believe it at first, but within a couple of weeks, I started feeling better, and it's just been continually. And my husband's the same way. He's down 2 belt sizes, and we don't count calories, So once you understand, you need a map of the body, of your body, what's happening in your body. And that's what you base your choices on, is your map. You don't need to do heavy metal toxicity detoxing if you don't have excessive heavy metals in your body. But you have to do the right test to see if you have excessive heavy metals, which many people do. And for women going through menopause, that time of life, the perimenopausal years, well, as your ovaries start to shut down, they're not making estrogen anymore. And as they're shutting down, it's the job of the adrenal glands to start kicking in and making about 1/10 the estrogen that your ovaries made. Not a lot, just a little bit, enough to keep your bones strong and your brain functioning well. But what happens, you've had a really stressful life and you wore out your adrenal glands. You have to learn about hypoadrenia and what that means. So the adrenals can't do the job. So now you have estrogen deficiencies and you get osteoporosis within a few years, or you get a higher risk of heart attacks, within a few years. And women's risk of heart attack is much, much reduced compared to men until they go through menopause. Then it's the same. Now, why is that? Well, they're not bleeding anymore. Mm-hmm. And one of the clues that you can do for people to reduce their risk of fatal heart attacks is have them donate blood once a month. You need to bleed once a month. And when you do that as a woman, you reduce your fibrinogen levels, you reduce your clotting factors, your blood's a little thinner again, as your body has been accustomed to for the last 25, 30 years. Mm-hmm. So I'll pause there and let you get a question in. Sorry.
Oh, wow. That was power packed, wasn't it? I am going to stop right there for this week, and we will pick right back up where we left off next week for part 2 of my interview with Dr. Tom O'Brien. But listen, guys, I don't want you feeling overwhelmed by what you are hearing. This is why you have me in your back pocket as your coach as we work through your specific health concerns. You don't have to keep Googling and filling up on overwhelming information and then trying your very best to do all the things that you are reading and hearing. We keep it simple and we reduce the overwhelm. And you know what? That helps your body to also heal and recover. Like I tell my clients in the Midlife Health Makeover, your body needs to feel safe and secure. It needs to trust you before it can begin healing. And we go through ways that you do that together. You are not on your own island trying to figure it all out on your own. But trust me, I know how that feels. And that is why I do what I do and why I have created my specific method to help you recover. With my advanced biblical mindset model and fatigue recovery framework, including the ABCs of adrenal support, you will have all that you need to restore yourself back to balance and great health and truly master your midlife health. So I invite you to join me on a complimentary fatigue freedom call where we will discuss your specific fatigue concerns so you are really understanding the why behind your low energy and really all that is coming with that daily fatigue. Foggy thinking, lack of interest, lack of joy, and a whole lot of stress around your health, right? And you can begin to have hope that you can really heal and recover, waking up feeling rested, remembering important names and tasks, and even having energy when you get home from work to do what you want to do. That is what you want, right? Because you are here, I know it is. So the link will be in the description below. I pray 3 John 2 over you. Beloved, I pray that in every way you may prosper and enjoy good health as your soul also prospers. Have an amazing rest of your week and treasure your wellness. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, my friend. I hope it challenged you. I hope it encouraged you and stretched you in some way. And if it did, would you stop right now and share this episode with a coworker, a biz bestie, a friend, or sister who has also been praying for a breakthrough in her whole health? Also, it would bless me so much if you would pop on over to Apple Podcasts and just leave me a quick review to let me know how much you are enjoying the content. And this really does help other women just like you to find the show. Treasured Wellness can also be found on Christian Mix 106 and over on YouTube. One more thing, come on over to our Facebook community, Holistic Health for Christian Women Over 40. I would love to see you there. Until next time, remember you are a beautiful treasure and good health in body, soul, and spirit is your birthright.